All the countries on Earth are in debt. The United States today owes more than $38 trillion, the highest amount in its history. The European Union owes around $14 trillion, and Japan nearly $9 trillion. Even wealthy oil nations like Saudi Arabia or powerful export economies such as Germany and China owe vast sums of money. But here lies the paradox. If everyone is in debt, then who exactly are they indebted to? This is the story of financial history, where wealth, power, and time collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Debt is not just a burden, it is the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every boom and bust rests upon this invisible scaffolding of interlocking debts. Every country holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is backed by another promise. It's like a poker table where each player has borrowed chips from the next. And the only rule keeping the game alive is that no one gets up from the table. To understand how we reach this point, a world drowning in more than $315 trillion of total debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy, we must go back to the beginning. Centuries before credit cards or digital transfers, the idea of national debt was born not on Wall Street, but in war. In 1694, England was at war with France, and its gold reserves were running out. The king turned to merchants for help. In exchange for a steady stream of interest payments backed by future taxes, those merchants funded the crown. To manage this new arrangement, the Bank of England was created. It was revolutionary. For the first time, a government could spend money it didn't yet have, while lenders received something of value in return. A promise from the state, one that could be traded, bought, or sold. This was the birth of the government bond, the seed of the modern financial system. France copied it. The Dutch perfected it, and the newly empowered United States used it to finance its revolution, and later its expansion westward. National debt was no longer a sign of failure, it became a measure of credibility. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Once, kingdoms conquered lands to extract gold. Now they issued bonds to earn interest. The battlefield turned into the balance sheet. 3 centuries later, debt became the world's dominant export. The U.S. owes $38 trillion, Japan over $9 trillion. Global borrowing rises by about $1 trillion every 100 days. Every nation is in debt. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pensions, is both a debtor and a creditor. But who exactly holds the other end of the rope? Let's start with the United States, because its debt isn't merely national, it's global. Of the $38 trillion, about half is publicly held, meaning the government owes investors. Roughly 2/3 of those investors are American banks, pension funds, mutual funds, major insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining third, about $9 trillion, is held abroad. Japan leads with around $1 trillion, followed by China with about $800 billion, then the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say the US owes China, it's true. But it's only about 2% of the total debt. Most of America's debt is owed to itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve repurchases them, creating new dollars in the process. American taxpayers fund the interest payments, which flow back into American retirement accounts. It's a circular mirror of debt in which the creditor is largely a reflection of the same system. And it's not just America, it's global. Japan lends to the US through treasuries. The US, via the IMF, lends to Europe. Europe, through the World Bank, lends to developing countries. And those developing nations in turn lend back to advanced economies by storing reserves in Western bonds. It's a planetary game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. And now there is a 4th layer, the most powerful of all: the markets. Behind every government bond stands a network of institutions, hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks managing hundreds of trillions of dollars. They are the true referees of capital. They decide which nations borrow cheaply and which must pay dearly to survive. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse, governments fall, and entire economies can be rebuilt overnight. Democracy decides who governs, markets decide who survives. And standing above all, the high priest of this modern order, is the central bank. Central banks don't just manage debt, they manufacture it. Each time the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, it creates new money in return. The debt on one balance sheet becomes the wealth on another. Every dollar in circulation represents a unit of debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as money without debt. Every coin, every bill, every digital dollar carries an invisible IOU engraved upon it. For centuries, this loop has held together through one thing: confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay the interest, even if they never repay the principal, the system keeps spinning. But when confidence disappears, we've seen what happens. In Greece in 2010, government debt became unpayable. Bondholders panicked, yields soared. The ECB and IMF intervened, but salvation came at a cost: higher taxes, spending cuts, and mass unemployment. For an entire generation, bailout became another word for sacrifice. In Argentina, endless defaults turned debt into a national curse. In Sri Lanka, fuel shortages and political collapse followed when the state ran out of foreign currency to pay its loans. When the system breaks, the creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, rating agencies and anonymous bondholders with their hands around entire nations' throats. And yet, even after collapse, the logic resumes. Old debts are restructured, new loans replace the old, and the system is reborn under a new name. Because in the 21st century, debt is not designed to be repaid. It's designed to be renewed. Modern governments don't actually intend to pay off their debt. Not now, not ever. This isn't conspiracy, it's policy. When individuals borrow, they're expected to repay. Governments, however, treat debt as a rolling subscription, issuing new bonds to pay for old ones. Economists call it refinancing. Interest becomes the real product. The rent on money is paid for its continued use. The global economy now depends on that rent, like a shark that must keep swimming to breathe. The financial system today runs not on repayment, but on trust. The U.S. will never pay off its $38 trillion of debt. It will refinance it forever. Japan, with debt exceeding 250% of GDP, continues to borrow. Yet its bond yields remain near zero, because for investors, sovereign debt is the safest asset. U.S. treasuries aren't viewed as debt. They're the foundation of global trade. Pension funds rely on them. Banks treat them as collateral. The survival of the system depends precisely on governments not repaying their debts, because if they did, the world would lose its safest financial instrument. If Washington decided to pay off all its debt, global banks and institutions would suddenly lose their most stable asset. The dollar supply would shrink dramatically, prices would fall, and a massive economic collapse would follow. Repaying the debt would destroy the engine that keeps the economy alive, so instead governments move in the opposite direction. They keep issuing more, not recklessly, but rhythmically. Debt has become the pulse of capitalism, flowing through pensions, mortgages, and markets alike. That's why when politicians talk about balanced budgets or paying off the national debt, they're really offering an illusion. The goal is not to erase debt, it's to keep it sustainable, usable, and trusted. Because when faith in the system collapses, numbers lose their meaning, confidence falls, interest rates surge, and an economy built entirely on promises ceases to exist. This is the fundamental secret of sovereign debt. It was never meant to be repaid. It was meant to convince the world that it will be repaid someday. That is the closed loop of trust. And as long as that trust endures, the numbers can grow infinitely. But trust isn't distributed equally. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only half the truth. Interest payments flow from taxpayers and workers to institutions and investors who hold the debt. Debt is not just a transfer between nations. It's a transfer between classes. That's why global inequality and global debt rise together. The system rewards those who borrow and punishes those who repay. If this pattern feels familiar, it's because it plays out at every level, from households to nations, and from nations to the entire planet. Neither creditors are villains nor debtors victims. They are two sides of the same engine. The real question begins when the engine runs out of fuel, when new loans can no longer match old promises. At that point, who is the creditor stops being abstract and becomes personal. Because at the top of this global pyramid, the blame isn't individual, it's collective. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. All of them, and all of us, are responsible. This is the modern financial system,